I know, ominous, right?
We're locked in now.
Hope not.
No, we haven't got the door fixed yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
No,
Are you
Right.
serious?
You just
No
walked out
way.
the window.
Ready, Chair?
No, it's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Climate Protection Work Group meeting this July 16th. I'm Acting Chair Peter McKenna. Joanne, our chair, sends her regrets. I'll start with our land acknowledgement. On July 16th, we acknowledge that this sacred land in which Smith Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might be here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Thank you. I'm looking at the agenda, item number 2. Are there any changes to the agenda? Additions? Seeing none.
So those 2 items, are they, do I need to raise them now? Is that?
Or you could do it during the roundtable, Sue, if it's mostly information.
Well, there's one item I think is of real interest in terms of this quest.
Talking about the funding?
quest. Sorry?
Talking about the funding agreement?
No, this is, it just came in today. Both of them did.
Okay, put a name on it and I'll add it to the agenda.
Call it Quest for sake of argument.
Quest. And we'll do it 7.2 under roundtable. Quest.
And what was the other one I asked for, guys?
Connect.
You can bring that up on your roundtable too then, Sue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. So with that addition, a motion to approve the agenda is moved by Sean, seconded by Nate. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We had an opportunity to look at the June 18th minutes. People want to see any changes or corrections to that? Seeing none, motion to approve the minutes is moved by Nate, seconded by Sean. All in favor? It's carried. After you've had a chance to look at it, amended agenda, is there any disclosure of monetary interests or pecuniary interests? Seeing none, we'll move right on to priority item 5.1. So you have before you resolution. Are we not going to put that up? Are we?
Yeah, it's already up. I can just do it like that.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Peter.
So there's just to introduce this subject, that the town of Smith Falls is considering approving support for backyard chickens, very contained, 6 within the coop, not free ranged. It might become a pilot for a year or 2, we don't know. It won't be this year, likely next year. Staff are working on information. There's been a large public survey with a really terrific response with all kind of wonderful comments. And any committee of council wishing to comment in any way on this, it's a good time to do so. So Richard, do you want to speak to this further?
Just a little bit. So the resolution here is something that I drafted, and it can be amended as your suggestions if you wanted to include something or not include something. I know that earlier in the week, Nate has provided a letter that would also be something you wanted to consider as well, but that's a separate piece. The resolution is what would be brought forward to council, but the signed letter would be something that could happen after the fact if you guys want to also endorse that as well.
So that this is the therefore that this group endorsed the creation and implementation of backyard chicken program in Smith Falls. So I'll just stop there. for discussion, consideration on this topic, knowing that probably in a month or so, the actual, it may be premature to advance this particular one because you don't know what the program's going to look like. However, and council hasn't decided to do it yet, but staff are going to come back with more information, probably within a month. So I'll stop there and just see if there's any comments. In spite of Nate's letter, I find that it's not a strong link to climate change. However, that doesn't prevent this committee from weighing in on it if they so choose.
I agree that it's certainly not like an obvious link to climate change. I think you can, like, especially if we're going to be putting forth a proposal down the road to do a compost bin collection, then this is kind of a nice adjoiner to that. But it's, and I think also from the food security angle that's relevant. My main interest in it is the idea that they could provide a tick control. And I know in the push and pull of the politics of this, I think it was determined that it's preferable to have them in a contained coop. And I get that. And if that's the way to make this work, fine. But in terms of from a controlling tick population, which is directly a result of climate change, I would prefer a system where if you have an enclosed yard, you're allowed to have your chickens loose in that yard. Like, that's what I would like to protect my kids from ticks. So I just throw that out there. But beyond that, I'm happy with the way this is going, and I would certainly support.
Okay, so that type of resolution, okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this?
I don't have any particular comments other than can we maybe just support it in principle at this point rather than in detail? Would that make it easier in terms of the detail coming forward later?
Do you support it in principle?
You can do whatever you want. We can. I just as I said, that one of the reasons, if you're not, we aren't looking at a full detailed proposal and responding to it.
Yeah.
The concept is what we're supporting in principle, as you say.
Yeah.
The only whereas I think I'd throw in a whereas, essentially that chickens in consuming food scraps help reduce food waste and impact on landfills.
Yeah.
Our overall food waste volumes would be reduced as a result of chickens consuming their food scraps.
I'm sorry, do we know that for sure? I mean, my understanding of chickens is that basically you're still feeding them 60 to 80% of imported grain. And what they're getting in nature, either, on the ground or from food scraps, is really only generally 20%. Mm-hmm. So it's not that much.
I guess I could say I haven't researched it, but my understanding is that if you give them vegetable scraps, they will consume them. So what's the impact? Maybe not significant, but maybe some.
I guess I'd shy away from that sort of detail.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we don't know.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
So
it also depends on how you do it. Like if you have a compost bin and the chickens have access to it, then they're not just getting the scraps; they're getting all the bugs that the scraps attract, which is a significantly larger chunk of their diet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we don't know without research, and I don't think it's worth researching, frankly.
Okay.
So we'll just support backyard chickens in principle. So is that the direction?
I would vote to support the as written, personally.
Yeah. And for those interested, the health unit does have a section on backyard chickens where they talk about they are neither for or against them.
Oh.
They just said, if you have them, here are things you must consider. Don't kiss them. Don't do that.
People have to be told that.
That's
need
fair.
to be told that's one of the things, but they have a really nice little section. So they're neutral on whether you have them or not. They exist, and if you're going to do it, here are things you must consider. Good hygiene. It's just common sense.
I can throw one more thing in if it's of interest. We were invited to participate in the opening of the chicken rescue place.
Oh.
And initially I thought, what is this? But then, yes, it made sense because you do have a number of people who take on backyard chickens and then fail,
Mm.
don't know what they're doing, don't want to do it, whatever. And what do they do then with the chickens that they've had? And so there is a chicken rescue place out to the west of Perth. So
Really?
yes.
And recently, I knew an older woman who had to leave her farm and had a dozen chickens. And Mel's animal rescue. She was trying to find a good home for them. So it wasn't a failure.
Right.
It was
Changes
life
circumstances.
changes.
Yeah.
So we have a draft resolution that I'm not hearing any objection to forwarding this on to council. So I'll just look for a mover or seconder for that. Moved by Nate, seconded by Peter Howe. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried.
Okay.
So we'll bring that forward. Thank you, Richard, for your work on that.
Okay.
Moving right along to Roman numeral 2, milestone number 1.
Okay.
Are you,
Yes, I can speak to that.
all right?
So last meeting, Nate had to have presentation about scope 3 considerations, and there was a lot of information, so we didn't make a decision on that at the time of the presentation. So now is your opportunity to either endorse or to say nay to the proposal to change the approach to how we measure emissions for milestone 1.
And
I'll start.
okay, go ahead.
So I'll just talk about I can't talk about the expectation of council when we set this up, but I can talk about my expectation on council when we did it, and it was that we would be following more of the standard municipal approach, not the one you're referring to, but the one we have been
Scope
working
1.
on. Scope 1. And so I'm not saying it was detailed in there because I went back to check. So it's nothing stopping us from considering a broader scope. But at least my understanding at council was the scope 1, which we've been working on, was the direction we were going to take. So then I'll turn it over to Nate.
Sorry, just to clarify, in terms of the ask, it's fine if you want to do it as it was just presented, but I wasn't actually hoping for a vote where we make the choice to pivot to scope 3. What I was hoping is that we can just send the document I created to the PCP so that Adler can provide his feedback. And my hope is that he'll agree that that is a useful tool to add to the toolkit. And if so, we can then go and use the toolkit and press the autofill button and it'll generate. I'm not actually proposing we move away from the PCP. I'm proposing that we run what I wrote by the PCP.
Oh,
That's what I said in the thing that I drafted. I'm not suggesting we submit it as our formal proposal. I just want to send it to him.
Sean, did you want to?
Sure. Well, I can support that, and at the same time, I think I recognize that going back to the chair's comments, that if we go back to the original resolution that council had committed to, it would have indicated a commitment to participate in the Partnership Climate Protection Program. So I think we would be following that as outlined as we've got to this point. I think that would be appropriate, but I do support pursuing further clarification from PCP based on your comments.
So what does that mean, Nate, to do what you're suggesting?
Well,
for work for staff or for the committee?
So, I mean, the thing that I drafted that I want to send to Adler, if just permission to send it to Adler, I don't need anything beyond that. It's an email that I would like to send out with the permission of this group. And to clarify, through the PCP, through this program that we're all participating in, they provide the option of scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3. It's just that on a staff level, the choice was made to do the path of least resistance. It's like all 3 options are available through the existing system, and they're like, it's not controversial that the scope 3 is more robust and better. It just tends to be more ambitious.
Right. And I'm not sure it was staff's decision. I think that's what I meant by council had that expectation. So I'm not sure it wasn't staff's. Anyways, and we also agreed to partner with Lanark County as a key partner, and that was the way they went. So we kind of twinned with that. So for work-wise on staff, if the committee endorsed your suggestion, it would just go forward from you. And would it come here first, that what you've populated?
So I've already was given permission to be in contact with Adler directly. So there's been quite a bit of correspondence with Richard in on those correspondence. I would simply like to send over the document and say, in the thing that I proposed, the drafting, it just explains like we are currently nearly complete our scope 1, but we have also done the scope 3. The scope 3 was done in a month, whereas the scope 1 is taken more than 2 years. And because of that, it makes sense to consider the idea of adding automatic autofill to the toolkit, because what we did could be automated. Like literally every town that signs up for this program could day one have the document that I generated. And then all of this effort that's gone into trying to model this, that could have all been channeled towards solutions. There's a huge opportunity cost that goes with the way we're doing it. So yeah, I'm not asking for anything other than the permission to send that email at this point. And depending on their feedback, we can take it from there.
Any comment, Richard, at all?
I don't see any harm in asking to change the process and the tool and to see if it makes any sense in optimizing it. I just don't know if the feedback would be implemented in the time when we're completing our milestone, but nonetheless, there's no harm in sending the email.
Agreed. And my hope would be that they evaluate it, maybe they find some areas that they recommend corrections or whatnot. But if they say this looks like an accurate, reasonably decent model of a scope 3, at that point, I would like to say, well, it's been evaluated. We should motion to pivot to a scope 3, because I do think the scope 3 is preferable, all things being equal, but only once the PCP has given their thumbs up.
Right. And we get to have that conversation at that time.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. I see no issue.
Is that amenable to this group?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, it hasn't taken 2 years, it has been 1 year. It took a year to sort of get things organized, but the actual work in terms of collecting the data is probably less than 1 year. And I would certainly endorse, as I recommended before, that it be sent into PCP ICLEI for their review. That's all I would ask for at this point. I wouldn't ask for inclusion or any further step, just their review.
Review and comment?
Yeah, and to get back to us then. And then, we can take it step by step. And I know, having dealt with them now, it's a few years ago, but it takes them a long time, a very long time. And so I wouldn't expect anything back from them. And the other thing is that in terms of milestone 1, that's where most municipalities start, right? The ones that are further advanced are the ones that have been at this for years, and they've added on as they've gone. So we're just the very, very early stages here.
So it looks like there's consensus to do as Nate suggests, with the caveat that what we're asking for, please review this, and we would appreciate comments and feedback on this. And how does the group feel about that?
So that's less than I'm asking for. Yeah. The thing that I put in writing is what I would like to motion that we consider, which is both asking them to review it and very politely suggesting that they not just consider adding this to the toolkit, because I think that's an important step. I don't think it's out of line at all. And I would like the group to consider both of those things. And again, the email that I drafted is very friendly. Adler's a real nice person. He responds very promptly to us. It's not much of an ask.
Is it, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to ask Tom, what benefit do municipalities have from this being in the toolkit?
So I think the only reason we gravitated towards the scope 1 is because it's the easiest. It's the path of least resistance. What I'm proposing is significantly easier. So It would remove an enormous requirement of municipality staff. Just like you wouldn't have to do the modeling anymore. It would be auto-generated. And the product that is auto-generated, I think quite arguably is more accurate and more representative of the real situation than the product that we produce using this much more tedious system. And it seems, if it's an option, they should at least consider it.
And from what I get, it's basically just taking averages and creating a baseline of emissions for a general municipality based off the population.
Correct. Yeah, based on either federal averages if provincial data isn't available, or provincial data if they want to dive into it a little bit more. But either one of those, the data on a per capita basis is readily available and could be auto-populated. And from there, people are free to make any adjustments that they want. But instead of starting with a blank page, you'd be starting with a really good best guess of what the carbon footprint is. And that's trivial to do from a technological perspective. They just need the encouragement to do it.
And after like 5 years or something, if they want to update their numbers, how do they do that?
So every time the statistical per capita data gets updated, it could just auto correct in the thing. So it could be an evergreen modeling document. And but in general, like once you commit to a scope 1 versus a scope 3, like the 10-year process that the PCP has doesn't anticipate going back and making it a scope 3. Like, because to do that, you then need to change all of your objectives and everything. Like you start off with the scope you start off with. So it would result in a much more accurate picture of the problem we're trying to tackle if the path of least resistance was a scope 3, and it could be.
I think the averages is fine, but is it not possible that some municipality is just out of the loop, like they're just an outlier and their emissions are going worse, so even if the provincial averages are going down, they think they're making progress when they're not? Like obviously they track their own data and they can input that in, right, if they can like possible, but if they're just relying on that, is it not helpful at all?
It's absolutely possible. Like I would say, with the law of averages, for it to be averaged, there'll be an equal number of municipalities underperforming and overperforming. It's just an average. And again, there's like the downside is that they have to enter their own data, which is the current status quo. And there's nothing stopping these municipalities from augmenting this with their own data if they so choose. It's just, rather than starting with a blank page, if you start with a best guess, and importantly, a best guess that isn't just a handful of sectors that we've decided to focus on, like the energy sector. It's everything. It's food. And as I showed in my presentation, most of the actual problem falls outside of the scope 1, which is why a scope 3 is so much more, accurate.
I would comment on your assumption that the reason we chose it is because it's the easiest and the path of least resistance. The other, we could get AI to do this for us, but then we would have no engagement, no public conversation. This isn't just about creating numbers. It's about bringing our communities and our country forward together. So it's not, because you're right. We could, as I'm sure AI, they probably would have this in no time, but we missed the whole conversation. So we didn't choose it because it was the least resistant. It allowed for this. We're being broadcast every time we have these conversations, people. So it's a little more.
Fair enough. But just to be clear, the public engagement part of this is the scope 2, which I'm not proposing we do anything. No question, this process, it's just, I think that this process would have been even better if we were starting with an auto-populated vision of scope 3. And same process and everything, just.
Sure, that's your belief. I hear you. So it's been suggested that now where we're niggling about is, could we say something like, please review and comment on this with consideration for using it as a template or auto, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, were they advise on the merits of amending the program to include this methodology?
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to telling them or suggesting they do it.
I'm fine with any phrasing. The phrasing that I used is very diplomatic. We're not demanding anything. We're just politely requesting that they consider it as an option.
Well,
But it's-
I'm hearing there's consensus to forward it.
Yeah,
We continue on with the work that we are doing and invite comment, feedback with the consideration of them adopting it. Is that,
Because I would appreciate their feedback with a broader perspective, I guess, from regional differences potentially across the country, large urban versus small urban, all these factors that may have an impact, areas of large industrial complexes versus areas which don't, commercial. So I think, yeah, it'd be good to hear the perspective on it.
I think
Absolutely.
we've never even considered or thought of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have that, Marie? Do you get what we've,
I think so. So to review, comment, and to advise on the merits of using this presentation from Nate in the toolkit.
and that means that you're going to send it, or it should come from town? It shouldn't come from an individual.
sure. Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah. So just to be clear, the phrasing that you just used,
Yes.
you want Richard to send Adler. Is that what we're
That's
motioning
right.
on?
That's the direction.
That's
Okay.
the direction,
Yeah,
right? That
sure.
council is giving now to Richard.
You don't by any chance have the phrasing, because that's a little colder and harsher than what I was
No,
saying.
I don't have
frankly.
my-
I was trying to be a little less demanding than that. But I'm flexible with whatever you guys want to do. It's
Can we
this
solve
is
the wording
figuring out the
after?
details. Yeah, that's fine.
But the intent is similar.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page there.
Okay. I'll just turn to the mayor, and been around a lot longer than me as mayor.
Copy that.
You don't see any issue with the committee just going ahead with this without going through, I don't.
No, I don't think, no, because we're still exploring our responsibilities here. And the situation is a matter of getting it's providing insight that's come from the committee, a member of the committee primarily. And we're trying to gain a better understanding of, will this provide potentially us and maybe others with an opportunity to streamline processes and end up with a better result. I guess if I could sum it up in a few words.
It's all of our goal.
Mhm.
So I'm going to say that's the direction the committee gave staff, rather
Yeah.
than a resolution and getting into that.
Yeah.
And the language could be tweaked. All right, thank you very much. Milestone number 1, update. Back to you, Richard.
Okay, so this update essentially is looking at the industrial processing and product use sector. Now, Smith Falls does have industrial uses, that is true, but whether or not they fall into this energy sector is really the whole point of this presentation. And to sum it up, we don't actually have any businesses that would fall directly into this sector, partly because a lot of the definition here, when we discuss it later, is really looking at things such as mining uses or any sort of chemical factory that we would have had, and that isn't not Smith Falls' current context. So it didn't really apply. So in terms of the review, what I did essentially was I looked at the town's business directory and all known big industrial uses here. And I cross-referenced it based on the definition that we're working with in the milestone project. And I came to the conclusion that we don't have any businesses that would qualify. Now, the RPPU sector essentially deals with non-energy related emissions from the industrial processes and products used such as mineral products, chemical industries, and metal production. In the following slide, I have broken down it slightly. It's a bit harder to read because it's a lot of text here. But essentially, there's 2 sections for the RPPU. So it either could be from combustion emissions from fuels obtained directly or indirectly from the feedstock, and these emissions would be in RPPU. Or if heat is released from a chemical reaction, the emissions from the chemical reaction shall be reported as industrial processes. So under that definition, none of the industries that we have here would neatly fall into that category as the main use.
So just checking in. We do have a cement plant in town.
Cement plant.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Lafarge is on the right across from the Via Rail. Now
I thought they used cement. I didn't know they made cement.
well, they not the cement dust or bag, but they mix the products all together there.
So are they mixing already made products?
Yes.
So they're using energy to mix products to make cement. So they're not necessarily, but
Yeah, they're not St. Mary's cement. They are,
They make the pre-molded things, right?
well, no, they sell, you mix it in their plant and they take it out in the trucks but I don't know if it's in Montague or it's right at the sale barn. It might be in Montague. Or it might be in town limits, I'm not sure.
I did check them. I just, from how my read of it was that they're using materials to make the cement products, but they're not creating the cement necessarily itself. So it's not.
That's the definition.
Yes.
I concur. I think that's right.
I think it is actually Montague, but I could be wrong.
So yeah, that's what they do. They take all these different products, put them together.
Right.
I
Exactly.
call that making cement.
No.
But you're talking about
Yes. So it's
one of the products.
right. So it's similar to food production, using these different materials but using energy to put them together. So it doesn't quite fit, and that's sort of why it was a bit tricky sometimes, because they're using a lot of industrial processes, but the definition is really strict.
Okay, thank you.
And this is just a contrast with the stationary energy. So if fuels are combined for energy use, the emissions from fuel uses should be counted under stationary energy. If the derived fuels are transferred for combustion in another source category, the emissions are also under the stationary energy. So that's sort of how I try to delineate between what would be the IPPU sector versus stationary energy. And this is more or less a checklist of where we're at in terms of what's the next thing. So in terms of the transportation, I was looking at waterborne navigation on railways because that's something that we do have here. So I was reviewing different methodologies from different places to see if it would be somewhat applicable here. For example, for the railways, in speaking actually with Adler, he suggested that if we knew the length of the track that the trains are using and the fact that it's a diesel train, we're basically estimating how often and how long the train ride is to estimate the use. So the only caveat with that process is that the frequency of the train is assumed, as in it's a constant number. So let's say there's more train rides, say in the next few years, we'll have to find a different way of measuring. It would be probably more closer to fuel cell data than anything else. But that's more or less an approximation. And the only reason why I'm looking at it in such a finer detail is if it makes more of a holistic understanding of our energy use overall. Because the intent is that if we find a way of measuring and tracking, we're looking at also reducing, right? So if we know how much you're using, that's sort of the reason why we're looking at trying to quantify this number. For the waterborne, it's something similar in the sense that we're trying to look at how many boat slips they are, how often they're in the boats for, like the canal trip, and also just how much gas they're using, or rather premium diesel, I think is what they use. So that's another estimating project. So I'm looking at seeing if they make any sense and if it's a more effective way. If not, then I'll be not including it because the Lanark County didn't include it in theirs. So
Didn't or did?
did not.
Did
not, no.
not. Okay.
Same thing with the wetlands, same thing with urban tree canopy. I'm just exploring just to make sure that we finally are okay with the assumptions implied with these methodologies and if it makes sense. So once those two were reviewed, then we would be done for milestone 1.
Any comments on railway and waterway?
Just one. I think because we know that we have reason to believe that we overcounted with the gasoline and diesel sales because we're basing that on sales. I think if we didn't count these, we could assume that some of that padding is definitely in there anyways, and it simplifies the your work. Because I think I think the number that we came to was based on the numbers that we're putting on fuel sales, we're assuming that every household in Smiths Falls is spending over $700 on gas or diesel each month. And for every house without a car, there's a house spending $1,400. And I think that's a very high estimate. And the explanation is just that everybody that stops to get gas on the way to Ottawa and whatnot. And given that we know that one's a little bit high, but it is what it is, just not counting these, I think, makes a lot of sense.
I'd say, though, it is interesting going forward because we are likely to see the transition from diesel engines in boats to electric. And it would be really interesting to mark that, right?
True.
And if we are going to see, as I think is the town's intention, have a commuter train between here and Ottawa, there's the opportunity there too to see that transition, right? So for me, that's argument to include some of those numbers, then I appreciate getting the numbers, Richard, is not the easiest thing. But I think 10 years out from now, I think whoever's on this committee would really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those are the final things to review. And then we can move on to milestone 2.
Comment?
How do we obtain the information on fuel sales locally?
Oh, so there's a company called Calibrate, and you pay them a fee, and they give you the fuel sales for the year that you're looking for. So we did for 2021.
So, but does for 2021, which
Our
probably
baseline.
low compared to where we are today with traffic. Yeah. Secondly, I guess, can they drill deeper? In other words, would they have postal code information on local purchasers of fuel? And I think if we probably find out maybe that 30% of local fuel sales may be going to people who don't have a local postal code.
I can ask. So
Yeah, so from credit card or debit card information, maybe they can obtain that.
yeah, so it's definitely an additional purchase, but I can ask. So what it is they did an aggregate essentially of all the fuel stops here. Now, if you wanted to know necessarily where the fuel stops are purchased, like what the number is between each of them, I can definitely ask, and also the postal code information to see what would be Smith Falls relevant versus going out of town because of the credit card information. I can ask and see what's available.
Okay. That'd be helpful.
I can dig a little deeper to get more information for you guys.
And earlier in the process, there was an alternate method of evaluating this data based on mileage, and that one is postal code based. I think we considered that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't recall exactly why we ended up going with this one. I think it was the last year that it was available was even earlier. So like both options are imperfect, but there is an alternate method based on mileage that some municipalities do use.
Yeah, so it's vehicles per kilometers traveled. So essentially, be assessing how far the cars are traveling within the boundaries of Smith Falls, regardless of whether or not they are in Smith Falls or not, and that would be based on the vehicle registration data. That was preferred, but it's a little costly, and the data wasn't available for 2021. So we just decided not to go with it because it wasn't available, and even if it were, it'd be more expensive. And so another thing when we look at these methodologies is that we're trying to find something that's replicable in the sense that we can do it again and again. And for this process, it wasn't easier to repeat every single time we're doing it.
I think we also rationalized that other communities are in the same boat. So maybe our Smith Falls residents were buying gas in Carlton Place, and probably would, if I remember. The railways is an interesting one. Because we're a transfer station, there's a lot of idling. And those trains sit there and idle. Diesel. And we have a lot of them. But
that wouldn't be captured with the methodology that he's talking about, because that's a length, like it's a real challenging thing there. I wonder if the railway companies might be logging that data because it's relevant.
I'm sure they do. To their bottom line.
Yeah, and I wonder if we
share
can
this
get it that way.
information. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's another, they might not want to share.
Peter.
Yeah, just away from railway, but talking about local industry, wheel transfer. Maybe we should look at how they operate. For example, they actually tag how the drivers drive, the speeds, and so everything is recorded. Now the drivers are more or less, everybody got that, like an iPad. They can check on their performance and so on. So maybe an interview or a conversation with them will lend some sort of insights into what the transportation companies are actually doing. Are they the avant-garde, or is it general practice?
Yeah, I can. So transportation is in like Via Rail, the big ones.
Just truck transportation.
Oh, truck. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they have 5 offices around the area, and that would be a good one to look into in terms of transportation.
I would also like to know what their plans are about electrifying their fleet.
Sorry, which company?
Wills Transfer, they're very modern.
Oh, Wills Transfer. Never heard of them.
They're into a lot of logistics and so on.
And we're just for information, right, Peter?
And even the
What's
way
proprietary?
they have the warehouse and so on and solar to minimize the
They're a big
green
business.
energy and so on. Yeah.
And this really does beg that community engagement. Right? Like we should know all the big guys. We should have a list, right? And we should know if we have them incorporated name by name in our data or not. And if we don't, if it's for proprietary reasons or whatever, right? Which is fair. And if they're happy to partner with us to work with us in terms of reducing GHGs, I think this is fabulous, right? That's that community engagement. That's that discussion that has to happen, right? And that's where, the global data is meaningless because we are the local community working with them, right? So that's where the action happens. Yeah.
Okay. So would you want me to reach out to Goals Transfer and seeing how they manage transportation in town? Is that something that the community would like to do?
Well, we have relationships with them,
okay.
and they have a community.
Liaison.
Colin Goodfellow is their community liaison person. So
Maybe you can just get in touch with them.
And another manufacturer panels, P2P or something.
I know the one, yeah.
So they would have a lot of wooden waste. Now, how do they deal with it? Is another thing that they burn it, because one point they actually asked about biochar. Okay.
Yeah.
So
not that it matters, but they're in Real Lakes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're at the corner of Coonley.
Yeah. Okay.
They probably have very little waste because it's all done. That's the whole idea of panels is you don't waste. But they're in Real Lakes, but it's anyways, I'll stop there. What else have you got on this, Richard?
This is pretty much it. We're moving on to project updates now, but yes, this is the ends of this portion.
Okay.
This is done, yeah. So we can move on to project updates.
Okay.
So in terms of project updates, as you know, we're almost nearing the end of completion for milestone 1. We're now beginning the survey creation for milestone 2. And speaking with Carl, he suggested that we just sort of create a general survey that goes out, and that's something that we're drafting right now. And when the survey will go out, there will also be a CPWG project page where everything will be in one spot, so that anyone who has more information or would like to contribute can just sort of find information there in the project page, and that'll be on the town's page.
Is this where we were going to update council at this step? We were talking about
Yes.
more public update.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So once the milestones 1 is done, then council will be updated on the fact that it's completed, and it will also be the opportunity for us to initiate the public engagement piece in terms of getting the survey out.
Sue, you want to?
Well, and sorry, what timing then are you thinking of for that?
So if all things go well, when it comes to the next meeting for CPWG, you'd have a draft survey to review.
August or?
Yes, August 13th.
Okay.
Yes.
You'd have a draft survey.
So we're drafting one right now. So
Okay.
when it comes to August 13th, my hope is that we have a draft survey to review. And I'm trying to get it within 15 questions. We can debate whether or not 15 questions is too little or not enough, but that's sort of what I'm aiming for. And then you guys can review it and give me feedback in terms of if we're hitting the right marks that we think should be hitting, or if we need to dig a little deeper. And then once the survey has been reviewed and commented by you guys, it would go to communications, and they'll give their 2 cents in terms of what makes the most sense, and it'd be live.
Is that a good time to bring it to council, do you think?
In August?
Well, or before it goes out.
Because we need, so do you want us to review it prior to the August meeting or?
No. So it'll be available for the August meeting.
Right.
I don't know necessarily if at the time when the meeting will be starting, say the 13th, if you guys would need sufficient time to review it.
Certainly
So
need
maybe
some
if you
time.
want it earlier, then I can probably work on make it available in time for review, like a week before the meeting. Does that make sense?
That's
Helpful.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, and then you guys can give me your 2 cents, and we can mull it over during the meeting. I'm open to corrections, of course. And then once you guys have given your 2 cents, then we make the edits and changes, and then it would be live.
And then you'd be looking at launching it in after Labor Day, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to wait. If you guys have given comments and there's no major changes that need to be done, I don't necessarily think it has to wait till Labor Day. But if you're thinking of
Soft launch in August, but a public launch after Labor Day to capture more attention. And And then run it for how long are you thinking?
Well, that's up to the committee. Personally, at least a month, a minimum. I don't know if you need longer, but at least 30 days just to get the general input. What I struggle with not so much is how long it runs for, but how do we keep public interest for that long?
Yep.
I don't want a survey to be on the website blinking, and no one has any interest, because then it comes down. Things come up, different priorities shift, and then the survey is not important anymore. So that's the struggle is how long can you keep it interesting?
Peter, you
And how do we reach out?
Something dealing with survey, but backtrack before survey. I missed the last meeting, and to me, reading the report, it was one of the most significant ones that I get from that.
Okay.
Particularly your report on the consumer ECG. You have a special phrase for it with the graph.
Oh yes, yes.
Have, how much is for transportation, how much is for propane. The surprising part is how much the huge value that is for healthcare.
Yes.
Now, I thought that sort of graph should actually be shared ahead of time before any survey, because then now you're adding some very important context of things. And in fact, if you start looking at the graph, you start adding all the components dealing with food together. If, say, the transportation sector is 20, propane is 18, and so on, the food sector come out to be collectively 832 units. Significant. So if people can see that one there, they say, wow, I never know that my impact is actually along those things. What can I do? When people understand that, then now the survey makes sense.
Yeah, we can do that as part of the soft launch, provide the materials that we were discussing so far. Of course, we'd be on the website, you can see the milestone 1 updates.
And I would even suggest, Rio has a Zoom presentation. We could make a presentation, and that we record it, that could become part of the resources, so people can revert back to that presentation with some sort of context now when you do your survey.
Okay.
Thank you.
I sort of thought when it comes to keeping the survey fresh, maybe it's a matter of once a week through that 30-day period, we would send out just an information piece, a press release of some type, and as part of that, here is a link to the survey.
Yes. So what I didn't know for speaking with Joanne for communications is that when the survey comes out, there'll be a post in the paper. So that's also something we're considering: a social media post, a post in the I think what's it called? It's not the Hometown News, just the other one.
Record
Journal. Yeah. So basically, to be posted in Record Journal when it comes out.
Nate?
I really like the idea of doing the educational piece with it. Earlier, I suggested doing a menu of options. It might be that that's just too ambitious for it. But in terms of just practicing goal-oriented communication and not just a general survey, I think we should at least level set and be clear that the purpose of the survey is the next milestone. We need to set an objective, and this is supposed to be how we do go about doing that, right?
Right. So the menu of options is still on the table. That's something that we're still doing. But what it is initially I was thinking that if we sort of had a set of options first, then the survey would make the most sense. But realizing that we're losing time, so we just put the survey out first, and then it would basically the information we learn from the survey would influence essentially the menu of options that we have.
And fair enough. I guess I would just suggest that whoever is drafting the survey do it with an eye towards the goal of, with the results of this survey, we now need to set objectives, and it would be really nice to be able to point to the survey as our mandate, and they should structure those questions with that in mind.
Yes, that's right. That's still definitely part of our goals.
What I'm hearing is the survey is just a tool. What goes on around the survey is almost more important. Yes. Why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. Peter's point about getting the public ready to understand what this survey and the impact they have by completing it.
So what we did in Tay Valley was we issued the survey. We ran it for a fairly long period of time, actually, a number of months. And then that allowed us to collect the list of people who were interested.
Oh, the list of people.
Well, the people who responded.
Oh, yeah,
to
I
the
hear
survey,
you.
right? You're
Yeah.
collecting
There's an option to fill in.
name and email address, and then you invite them to a workshop, right? Where you're actually working through the first level, which is the milestone 2, setting the reduction target, right? And so what we did was we asked people what they wanted. What did they want as a community to do? Did they want to reduce by 10%, 20%, 50%, whatever, right? And so we took that then, and we did provide some broad examples, if you will, of what that meant. And then we collated that information, and we worked on a more detailed list. And then we went back to the public again a second time, 3-4 months later, and asked them specifically what they were prepared to engage in. So but like, it's as Peter is saying, the survey is one thing, but it's all the stuff around it, because ultimately what we have to be about is engaging the community, because we're not going to do this ourselves, right? It's everybody else who's going to do it. And so we need to be bringing them along, engaging them all the way through the process.
So you mentioned something interesting. So one, you had the list of names. So in my mind, the survey would just been open to the public, but it wouldn't be requiring you to add your names. I don't know. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I didn't consider it like people putting their names forward when they answer the survey.
People who are going to respond are those who are going to be somewhat interested, right? And
You
you
always
want
put
to
the
capture
option.
them.
Would you like
Because
to?
they're the leading community representatives then, right? They're our ambassadors.
And you always add a spot. Would you like to give us your name and your contact?
Yeah.
If you don't, that's fine. You can stay in.
Yeah, for sure. But it's
optional.
surprising how many people will. You know?
So when we put this on the August 13th agenda, there'll be survey, questions, comments, feedback, but the process of how to set it up, what's going to happen with the information, and then the next few months what we'll do with that information. And that could be, so if we're thinking like that.
So it's not just a survey that we're announcing. We're announcing the engagement of the community in our process to tackle climate.
And I would again emphasize, the education part is important.
No, for sure.
It's no point asking people percentages and so if they do not understand what the significance are. Secondly, what I also like to see happen is we can make use, if you're going to be using our website, it is an opportunity to now use that tool as a communication to engage our citizens. So that could be another secondary purpose, right? But let's not try to lose those opportunities because you want to engage and so on. If you can establish that and get more people to be involved in that process, we are succeeding more than just addressing climate change.
We haven't really talked about that stage very much yet.
Communication or the education?
That engagement stage, we've talked about the importance and the value. You've given examples of what we could do. Is there the best practice in the toolkit about that? So you do the survey, so what? Or is there?
So the toolkit says that the public engagement piece is critical. That's true. They recommend it for the creation of the climate action plan, but as we discussed, engagement from the beginning is important. So practices in terms of how that's done is really light. So this is more for us to make it more specific to Smith Falls. The toolkit doesn't give a lot of examples necessarily about how to better engage. There are a few case studies around, but nothing for Smith Falls really.
And I'm sorry, but when I did this, basically it was the old thing, Peter, right? They engaged the public at the point when the draft was done, right? Hardly any room for any revisions, and you engage 10 people and they sign off on it and that's it, right? I'm sorry, that is not public engagement in my mind. And the intention of engagement is not just to get the data, it's to actually bring people into the process, right? To actually get them thinking about it.
Have them wanting more.
Yeah, Yeah.
What I'm doing is trying to put the agenda together for that next meeting.
Yeah,
in
for
my
sure.
head. So
No, no,
I'd
I
say
understand.
the survey, but what's more important is
Implementation.
all the stuff that's around it and what we need to consider for this fall. Do you know? So anyways, I'm hearing a real passion
You
for,
know this it's social marketing,
Yeah.
right? And if I could just add, and I know we're going to get to it later, but it feeds into this, it's the follow-up on those 2 low-income programs, right? Because there is really valuable information that we can be giving to people to take advantage of, right? Not just be responding to our requests for information, but saying to them, here,
Here's
take
resources.
advantage of this. You can get $13,000. You can get a free low temperature heat pump. You can get a free freezer, all this stuff, right? Let's use that as part of the draw too.
So if I could just add one thing, in terms of the public discourse, there's our group meeting directly with the town, with the community and issuing this survey and whatnot. We're also reporting to council, and I think we're talking about doing that pretty soon. And then again, when the system involves reporting to council, because it's council that actually needs to approve whatever emissions targets we
That's
want
correct.
to put forward.
That's correct.
And so as part of that back and forth with council, it would be lovely to get some input from them, because
As a council?
yeah, like, in terms of what they would like to see from the public engagement in order to approve of X target. Like if we're, you know what I'm saying? Like if we could reverse engineer from that, what does council need to see from as a product of the public engagement in order to be supportive of, pick your emissions target. But that's what as soon as the survey is done, our next job is presenting council with this is the emissions target that we would like you to approve. And so if we can imagine what that's going to be like and what we would like to have done with the community prior to that. And to the extent that we could talk to council about that and just get their, they might be very into certain solutions and not particularly receptive to others. And it doesn't make sense in leaning into something that won't pass council. But it could also be that council wants to, wants more public engagement in a certain area, and we can lean into that if that's the instruction we get.
Well, if let's say we draft the survey, you guys give me your comments and feedback at the time of the 13th, then it'd be possible, August 13th, then it would be possible to leave an opportunity for council to comment as well. It all depends if it makes sense.
So we started with the survey. We're still going to review the draft, but Nate's right. And I started this comment about the same line. This is an opportunity to do a check-in with council and update. Tell them this is where we're at. This is what we're about to do. Talk about maybe a little bit more detail on the community engagement process, but then invite council for feedback and comment, and let them know what these next steps are, including the approval of targets and so they have to. But my take is, Sean and I are the only ones here. They aren't getting regular updates. They can look at this if they want, and I'm betting they're all busy and they're not doing it. So we have to go in with a summary.
Real basics.
Right.
Yeah, starting over.
It can't just be the survey. It has to be basically we're here at this point. This is
Yeah,
what we've done
and
so far.
this is what we need from you, and this is what's going to happen in the next few months, and this is why you need to know it, including some of the graphs Peter talked about, like things they understand, we understand.
So a way to approach this, because there's 2 lines, right? There's the corporate and the community. And so it's quite viable to take the corporate reduction forward early on, because that's council's decision.
So,
Yes.
And to get them familiar with the notion that there are the 2 streams, and thinking about the corporate one and what's going to happen in that line, right? And then the community one is following along. But that could get them thinking around the idea of, how much do they want to cut the corporate emissions by, right?
So One thing,
Sean, I'll just let Sean, along similar lines.
I agree. And I think the sooner the better with that, partially because the town is ongoing capital projects, ongoing initiatives. Staff are planning now, we'll be planning this fall for the 2025 budget.
Right.
And it's important that this sort of be on the radar. And I guess the next step of that, of course, would be having the application of a climate lens to the projects we're going to do, which we would want to discuss here first before we get to that point. I think it's the sooner the better on that. We don't need to do it all at once. We can break it into two. I would agree.
okay, so I have 2 comments on that. One, so if we are setting targets specifically for the corporate as well as the community, are we all agreeing that the targets would be different for the community and the corporation at the same time?
Absolutely can be.
They can. I'm just wondering if that's what we're all committing to. Because
I just assumed they would be, depending on what sector you're looking at or what initiative.
that works for me. So when the milestone 1 is completed, there will always also be business as usual forecasts for the community as well as the corporation. So that will sort of better frame the concept for what is at stake, so to speak, if we're continuing along this path so far. So when we bring any update to council, they'll have a business as usual forecast for the corporation, and they'll have an understanding of like where we're at so far and what this all means.
I think it's so much easier for them to deal with the corporate
Okay.
first, because that's their assets,
Yeah.
and fundamentally, they have nothing to do with what happens in the community, right? All they can do is persuade, motivate,
Yeah.
there's not much else they can do. So getting the corporate piece clear with them is probably just a really good.
Okay.
So let's just, I'm just going to summarize, I think what we've agreed upon for Marie
you.
and for the next meeting for Richard is definitely Richard will have a draft community survey ready for us for feedback. With that, we'll talk about the logistics around when would it go out, what needs to be done before it goes out and during and ongoing, some of the incentives that Sue has talked about, and information, what you can get out of this. And then at the same time, we're treating this survey launch as an update to council, because we will have that piece of the work, the corporate piece of the work done, and we're going to present them with some information on here are what the corporate assets are using. These are the emissions. We need targets, and we need you to to give us feedback. And we may have a set of very specific questions on each target. Do you agree? Too high, too low? What we need to know. And it might take a couple of meetings. They won't make it all in one meeting. And at the same time, the mayor would introduce the idea that our intention, the committee's advice to council, is to incorporate this into the 2025 budget process and the climate lens on our strategic plan, and all of our work going forward now has to consider this.
Exactly.
And so those are the key decisions and consultations we need to do, and that would happen likely early September.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it's on the work.
And then at the same time, go to the committee, and then we can have conversations throughout the fall in helping set the community targets. But we can have more conversation about that.
Just so I'm clear, if we're creating 2 separate processes for setting these targets, is that sounds like it's going to take a lot longer than the process of just doing it all at once, quick and right? Like, does this mean that the milestone 3 is gonna be like a 2-step process, basically?
I don't see it. I'll
Sure.
just see us refining our community engagement, and one of the key audiences is council. So we've just established some different ways of approaching council than we would the community, but they're happening simultaneously.
So can we try to submit those, like both of those goals and everything in parallel? Because it would be nice if milestone 3 didn't take very long. Like, you know what I'm saying? And if we have to do a presentation doing the corporate budget, which I get we have more control over, so there's logic, but it's actually like a very small part of our footprint. And then once that's all done, we still haven't actually accomplished the main meat of the project, which is to set the mission, the targets for the town. And that would be a separate presentation to council and a separate approval process.
Town doesn't, well, I don't know about that yet, but I do know that we're gonna have a month or so of waiting for the surveys to come back. We should fill that time with working on council, that's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're gonna,
I think it'll work out.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, it's okay.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't think they will happen together, and I don't see any reason that they should, frankly, because they are independent. And so if the community engagement piece takes a little bit longer in order to truly engage the community, I think that's far superior, because then we've got that group of people on board, right, who want to be doing stuff. So I don't want to see that pushed that way. I have to let you know, at the county level, the longest part was milestone 3. That was
That's I was going to get to that.
researching the ideas, populating them, figuring out the detail, all that sort of stuff. And then if you come back then to the corporate one, I have no idea if you've yet met with, the executive management group here.
No.
That's a key step in terms of the corporate line, right? Engaging them, because they're your community in effect. And so that has to happen. And then the actual community part, that can be a lot longer. But working out the detail about what the executive management committee will want or be able to do in terms of milestone 3, that takes some work too, right? So all that part takes the longest amount of time of the plan.
I'm gonna go to the mayor next, but to have some tension between, let's keep this moving along, while at the same time respecting the process does take some time. That's okay, let's nobody's on the dragging it out, but we also want to be respectful that community engagement to do it properly does take time. So it's to find the balance.
We'll bring the dialogue to council earlier at the same time as we are doing community consultation. Creates that narrative of the community that the town is already working towards its commitments, its responsibilities. And sort of creates that sense of ownership that we can demonstrate to the broader community that, okay, council's on board, the town's on board and doing what we can. Here's some milestones that we've committed to. Here's our objectives. Here's our initiation with some plans. While the community is thinking about how they answer the survey and how they're going to, take their own responsibility to importance.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Marie, do you have the essence of what?
Yes.
Okay, and Richard, are you comfortable?
Yes.
We're gonna have another chance to go back at this on August 13th. Okay, Peter, last word on
A
this.
quick question. I was glad to see in the last last Smith Falls Journal, there was a section about, inviting young people 16 and 17 to join the committee.
Right.
How many of you have seen that? Okay. My question is, probably we have to look at a better way to get the kids involved. Maybe Toby, you can comment, would a student in the summer see that one, they will act on? So
I mean,
I'm glad that we're taking action, but I'm worried about that, it may not be an effective way because of the timing.
well, school's coming up, right? So we can always do a promotion to encourage members to join our committee around the fall.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said that we could have a promotion to encourage students to apply to be a member of the committee during the fall, since school's starting then.
Yeah, but the ad actually was, I think, was last week that I saw.
And it's still up, and it's on our website as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I was at SF, there was an environmental club, so there are interested students probably, but I don't know. You just got to find them. Yes.
Well, I guess maybe we can reach out come September to the school and see who's responsible for that course, that program, and see if they would be willing to put some names forward too.
It might be a good way to push the survey too, if we were to do a presentation to the schools and then encourage the youth to get their families to fill out the survey.
I like that.
Might be the youth doing the calculations.
Yeah, the nagging children are powerful tools.
During Democracy Week, we did our council meeting at the school.
That's October, right?
October, yeah, so we could.
Interesting. That's
I'm going to move on to item 6. We've just talked a lot about next steps.
No, item 6 was the next project updates. So this whole conversation had been updating and just next steps.
All right.
So we're good with that.
We're good with that? So we're on to roundtable?
Yep.
Sue, Brandon, I think you've got 2 or 3.
I've got 3 there. So I know in the last meeting I had asked that those 2 low-income or wrapped into one, but anyway, the low-income program be publicized, be promoted.
That was done.
But I haven't seen
With the
it.
roundtable? Sorry, the low income. So there was, I know
Save on energy.
I know that had circulated it, but I wasn't following up to see if it had been posted.
I haven't seen anything. I didn't. hear
Normally
from
they're posted on their
anybody.
social media posts, so if it wasn't there, I'm not quite sure where else.
I didn't go scrolling social media, but can we follow up and see?
Well,
And I
that are
think
county
it's-
programs?
No, these are
No.
provincial, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, I know, but I am really genuinely concerned about the loss of these programs when we have the next federal election. And given the economics of the town of Smith Falls and the number of people who would be eligible for these programs, I really do think we have to put, as a committee, extra emphasis on promoting these programs, to have residents here take them up, because they're fabulous programs and they're applicable to owners of houses and tenants. You know, you can get up to a low temperature heat pump, which is, you know, like a $15,000 piece of equipment to begin with. You can get new freezers, refrigerators, you know, all sorts of energy efficient stuff. I just think this is something that as Smith Falls, we should be on top of. And doing just social media posts is not enough. So, you know, it needs to be something that we talk about in terms of the whole community engagement piece, right? How do we promote this? Can we come up with some just about door-to-door campaign? I don't know, because, you know, there's a lot of information out there about various programs, and people look at it and they see it and they think it's a scam. These are not scams. They're real. They're genuine. So anyway.
It's too bad we lost, well, we didn't lose representation from Rito, but they were on our other committee, Rito Community Health Services, because they serve a lot of that population. And
Yeah.
I see that.
So I
they
think
also on your Monday, not your Monday, but on the Monday dinners, they're signing people up for the seniors dental programs there. Because they're in there, 125 people show up every Monday.
okay. So this
And
is
they're
the stuff
getting into them.
But how best to get
Yeah.
some information out there.
Yeah. And I think that maybe could that be part of the next meeting in August? Can we
Invite?
You
Are you
know,
Is
asking?
there
scratch our
another
heads
committee
together to
that's
talk about
more
this?
appropriate to send it to? Not more appropriate,
that could assist us?
that is more focused on this.
So we're just trying to cross pollinate between different
Not
groups.
pawn off. No.
Cross pollinate.
Engage them.
No, I said cross pollinate.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's people focused on low income services and resources, and then there's people focused on climate, and this is marrying.
But you know, it's low income is defined so differently. Okay, so these programs, low income, one person in a house under 45,000, two
Oh.
people under 66,000.
Both
You
for-
tell me,
both for households.
like that's
Yeah, for eligible.
that's not low, right? The way some other programs are so low. So
Okay.
anyway,
So all of us have responsibility for this. Richard, the mayor will keep thinking about how to and get it broadcast. But you're asking for it to come back onto the agenda next month.
Well, I think it's appropriate, have a discussion on the methods we can follow to, maybe some education on the programs.
Yep.
And then and then try and decide how best to promote it and get in front of the people that can use it the most.
So Marie, that'll be an agenda item, business arising, I guess it would be out of this.
Just a thought on that subject. With the survey systems that they have, a lot of the time there's an option to, if you ask a question and if they say yes, you ask another thing.
Exactly.
We could just have an automated survey like that on the website that says ask them, are you a homeowner? Is this your income? And if they answer yes to those things, it auto-populates with the things that are available. And we could just steer everybody in town to that. And we could also look at if you were to compost, if you were to recycle, if you were to buy an electric vehicle and just, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Just even a Google survey would allow you to do that.
Yep.
So it fits with the next agenda.
Totally.
Okay.
Yes.
It really does.
Roundtable number 2.
Sorry. Okay. So both of these items just came in yesterday and today. And so they're just programs that I think we should be taking advantage of. So one is a program providing federal money through the FCM for tree planting. And this includes street tree planting, urban planting with a low canopy cover, park tree planting, riparian planting in flood-prone areas. And so this fall of 2025 planting season, this is money now.
When does it close? Is it October something?
I think so, yeah, October 15th.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, this again is an action, right, that we can be taking both under the corporate and the community. So I think that should be something to be looked at.
I think for that one specifically, we'll have to engage community services because they do have their own tree planting plan. So I want to make sure that they mesh, but that's a good idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, we shouldn't. And, I'm sorry, but.
So internally, are you circulating this?
Share it, and then we can share it with the Director of Community Services.
Yeah.
The tree planting program, yeah.
Okay. So I've sent it to both Richard and Marie.
Okay.
So they have that. Okay. So that's that one. And then this one, I'm sorry, I know even less about, but it just really caught my attention literally as I was going out the door. This is through Quest. We're recruiting rural and remote municipalities from across the country to participate in the MNZA Community Energy Research Project. So this is for communities of 30,000 residents or less. And it's focused on communities that are trying to motivate net zero action and are basically having trouble doing it. And the deadline to apply is August the 5th. That's just with a letter of interest. And then what the advantage would be that we would be connected with other communities that are trying to do the same thing. So I think it's worth just sending a letter of interest in.
Is it
and
free?
then see from there.
Sorry, is it a free program?
At this point, yes. And I suspect there would be money with it.
So does the group want the chair to send a letter of interest or find out more?
Well, technically, should probably come from
Go.
council.
Okay.
We're gonna-
Oh my gracious.
Pardon?
Okay, just a letter of interest even?
Well, over.
There's no commitment.
Yeah, but I think you're just representing municipality, or I think it should.
Yeah, we don't represent the municipality.
If you can share that, we'll see about getting it
Send it
added.
to two of them.
Oh, yeah, it can be added
Oh,
to
for it.
Monday's agenda
Yeah.
for a discussion
Okay.
and consensus, and then we would.
It says it closed on the 5th of August.
Yeah, it's
So
coming
maybe
soon.
when we're ready for the agenda, because we meet on the 13th next.
Oh, we
No.
meet next Monday.
Council.
Council.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so if we could.
I'll circulate it.
Mayor, bring it forward as an update.
Yeah, see about if Carl can bring it forward as a report. I know the time is tight, but I know the.
When does he
agenda's
get back? Okay.
formed tomorrow, but maybe it's a very modest thing. It's a very small report or information, and then if committee agrees.
Just to do the letter of interest. Then you find out more and then you decide whether you want to, or we want to. So, yeah.
Okay,
Hey,
so for that, the minutes just say that letter of interest will be offered to council for consideration as soon as possible, likely Monday.
mm-hmm.
And if staff are able to bring that forward, if not, you could probably do it in an update on our committee reports, Mayor Panko.
True. Yeah. So maybe forward that email, I guess, to me as well. So I've got a comment.
I'll forward you and I'll see Carl in there so they can all on the same page.
Thanks, Sue, for that. little nuggets.
Just opportunities, right?
Any other roundtable items people want to raise? Now, it says next meeting August 11th, but we've been all talking about the 13th. So
13th.
it is the
I'm pretty
13th.
sure, but
My agenda says the 11th.
so it's supposed to be a Tuesday. So if it's a
Not
Tuesday,
Not Sunday.
On Sunday? You're opposed to that?
it's
So,
the 13th. Yeah, good.
hearing no further business.
Just a quick item for information.
Sure.
This Saturday, Parks Canada is holding a log and paddle event.
Yeah.
It's happening in Peterborough, Ottawa, and Quebec. And so the idea is we should start looking at Smith Falls being the center of the Rideau and an urban area, rural area. Perhaps we should look at, we could have us, collaborate with parks and hold similar event here next year. So put Smith Falls on the map as a paddling destination. Okay, just an
I
idea.
agree.
Yeah.
We are waiting in anticipation of parks to come out with a draft plan
Measure plan, yeah.
for what the future, 10-year plan is it? Something like
Oh, for
that?
Parks Canada?
Yeah, on what is their engagement and how they're gonna run the park. It is a park.
Yeah.
So, and they've broken it down into chunks, so the Smith Falls region,
Yes,
Is it-
secondary plan, I think, for our region.
secondary plan. So we're waiting to have input, and those are the kind of things that drive us crazy, Peter, that,
Will there be a climate function or climate element in that plan?
if you look at.
So,
I would like to think so.
should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
So hearing no further discussion, motion to adjourn, moved by Nate, seconded by Mayor Hancock, all in favor. Carried, thank you.